Bud Clark first ran for mayor in 1984 as a neighborhood activist concerned about the lack of citizen access to City Hall. He was a political outsider and tavern owner, and to the surprise of many, he won the race in the primary and went on to gain a second term in the 1988 general election. After his first election, he developed a consensus approach to politics involving citizens from every sector to get the metropolitan area moving again. His first success was winning Tri-County support for an Oregon Convention Center here in Portland. A number of other projects have taken hold during his administration, including the 2,000-acre Columbia South Shore industrial area, the North Downtown Development District, and Pioneer Place here in the heart of the city. He has also focused his sights on the major social issues confronting the city of Portland. Believing that crime cannot be solved by law enforcement alone, he has emphasized a police-community partnership through a community policing plan. He's also established the Neighborhood Revitalization Program. Bud Clark's spirit and accessibility have earned him the reputation as the people's mayor. Before leaving office on December 31st and passing the baton to his successor, Vera Katz, Bud joins us today to share his observations and feelings while serving the people of Portland for the past 8 years. And looking to the future, he will provide some insight into the course he believes the new mayor and council should set for the city. Please join me in welcoming our mayor, Bud Clark, to the City Club.
Thank you, Patty, very much. And thank you all. Thank you all very much. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Well, that's what I was afraid of. Your expectations are going to be too high here today, I think. Before I start the speech, though, and I would like to say that one of the reasons there's so many tables taken today is that my family is here. And also a lot of my staff is here. And so right off the bat, I would appreciate it if my family members that were here would stand up. My mother, Mildred Perkins, and my wife, of course, Sigrid Clark. My daughter, Rachel. Stand up, Rachel. My son, Jason. And his wife, Angela, who is next to him. I think this is the first. And then I think next, and I won't introduce all of them because we could take up the entire, well, not the entire time, but would all the staff members that, not necessarily just current staff, but all the staff members that are here today. There's a huge bunch of people that have come in that would stand up. Diane, my secretary, that's sitting next to my mother, Jack McGowan, Carolyn Barber, David Kish, who's current, Jan Van Domelen, Steve Moskowitz, Tris Tobkin, and Phil Thompson. And Chris Tobkin, as you know, used to be one of yours. I was able to capture her away from the City Club with the assistance of Ned Luck shortly after, well, actually before I took office in September of 1985, and she's been on my staff ever since. I'll start the speech, and I just want to thank you again for allowing me to speak. I asked for this. It wasn't a situation of a resolution from Charlie demanding that I show up. And so I felt very good about that today, actually. I'm in a way, I'm pleased to be here. I spoke once before, and I'll start the speech, and then I'll get on with it here. I'm a regular listener to the City Club. I rarely miss one. Ted Gabler's speech last week gave me the smug satisfaction again of knowing that my administration has been an agent of change. Things not only look different here in Portland, but Portland city government has changed because this small business person, tavern owner, became mayor of the city of Portland, Oregon. I have consistently told my staff, even in our transition period, that it wasn't important who received the credit, but only that we get the job done and get it done right. That we face the problems and really do something about them, not just talk about them. Over a year ago, I changed my mind on this and asked for this last forum before leaving office to toot our horn a bit about the things that have happened on my watch as the mayor for the last 8 years, and to point out the great difficulty in starting and sustaining change in government. it has been surprisingly difficult for me to write this speech. I even had a dream last Wednesday night that I forgot to show up. I did. There was so much I'd like to say and no way to say it all. And I've shortened it a bit, and I'll be looking forward to your questions. That's the first page of an 18-page speech, and I'm not going to read it. I've just decided I'm going to talk a bit and then get to the questions early on. One of the things about writing this speech has been so much information has come to the fore, and I haven't really known how to get it all together and organize it properly. And so I'm going to run it more like a conversation and talk about what's happened and what's been happening. I don't quite understand why I'm so nervous about this. I made a speech the first year that I was in office, and I argued before the city club in debates, and I even went before Johnny Carson and was never as nervous as I am today for some reason. So at the last moment, I've decided to throw the speech out and just talk the way that I do to smaller groups and get feedback from you and chat a bit about the city and where it ought to go in the future. I thought maybe I'd review a little bit of where we've been going over the last 8 years. It's been 8 years, folks. It started very fast. I didn't realize what a huge rush it would be. I've been a river drifter. There's some of my river drifting friends in the audience today. I haven't had much chance to do that since I've been office of mayor, but this 8 years and being mayor has been like being in my canoe and going down the Deschutes River and through the rapids and everything, and you might like to know that I actually did that just before running for office. I actually, the year or two, I think that's one of the things that gave me enough guts to run for office in 1985, was the experience of going through Whitehorse Rapids in a canoe, standing up and staying standing up. And that's what like being mayor is. I dropped to my knees a few times, don't get me wrong about that. But when I ran for office, there was nobody else that was going to run for office. David Kish and Ernie Bonner came and asked me to run, and then Margaret Strawn and Gretchen Kafori came and asked me to run. And I talked it over with my family, and then in December 28th, I think it was, after Christmas, I finally made the decision. Nobody else had decided to run at that time. And I started running. I borrowed $50,000 on my house. People didn't think I was serious, but when you borrow $50,000 on your house, you're serious. And I ran, and I won by a good margin in the primary, to the surprise of many. I thought I was going to take a vacation and go to Europe for a few weeks or so, but that was impossible to do because of the reaction from the public about where this mayor was going to take their beloved city. I stayed in Portland and met with many, many boardrooms, talked to many, many people to reassure them of the sanity of this person. I even talked to Pat LaCrosse, who showed me a list of items that were proposed for the city of Portland and had been rejected by the previous mayor. And I picked out convention center right off the bat, that we needed a convention center in this town. And I said, that's going to be the fire in the hole that's going to get this economy going. Because I didn't believe the previous mayor when he said the locomotive of Portland is going to pull the state of Oregon out of the recession. We were in a deep recession. We weren't able to sell agricultural products because of the high value of the dollar. And we weren't able to build houses because of the high interest rates. I ran for that office. Also, I didn't think the mayor was taking us on the right course economically. I also thought he completely lacked compassion for the people of the city. There was a complete absence. He just wanted the homeless to leave town. And I thought this reflected on some of the other attitudes that he had about compassion in the city and what we really needed to make this city run. Since nobody else was going to take up the challenge, I did. I actually did Frank a favor, you might know. He got a better job in Washington, D.C., less work, and about a $20,000 raise, as a matter of fact, at that time. So actually it was a win-win situation for everybody. Over the past 8 years, we have first got right into three major issues. First of all was getting the convention center passed in all three counties. That was the big issue. The second was the homeless plan, was the second big issue we got in. And the third big issue, of course, was changing the police department. And because of a 10% wage increase shortly after we took office, we found out that we were in a tremendous bunch of financial trouble. So we had a lot of financial problems that we had to cope with. On your table, there are copies of the current city budget in brief, and also from that first time we were talking about the staff, I've been going back and looking at things. There's a budget message from Bud Clark as Portland's mayor nominee. We had an office in Pastor Joe Smith's church, the Lutheran Church, St. James Lutheran Church up there, and we brought in Dan O'Toole from Portland State to have what is called normally a retreat, but that Ned Kluck calls an advance, as you must know. And we sat down and decided where we wanted to go with the city. We were naive. Nobody had ever done this before. We were naive, so we went ahead and did what we thought was the right thing to do. And we came out with, it's even just copied the same way that it was, and we came out with principles. First of all, we pledged the following guiding principles, and this is before we even took office. Recognize Portland citizens as family members, serving them with equality, dignity, and respect. Second, orchestrate the work of the city for the long-term good of the entire community. So many times we see it's not the long-term good that's thought of in making decisions in politics, but the short term. Number 3, endeavor to make the work of those engaged in city affairs meaningful, efficient, and productive. And 4th, administer city affairs with openness, honesty, and creativity. 5th, promote civic pride by encouraging participation, diversity, and communication. Those were our principles, and then when we went into office, we laid out, and you will see a copy of our goals and for the different bureaus, our issues of concern and opportunity. And even at that time, the first month that we were in office and we assigned the bureaus to the different commissioners, we laid out goals and wanted results on those goals. Some of them were things that the commissioners wanted. Some of them are things that we thought were very important. And you can compare them down the line or ask questions about them later. I'm not going to go over them all, but I was surprised how many things we were thinking about tackling at that time and how many things that are on this list that have been done and accomplished, and if not quite done, are just about ready to be completed and accomplished. A very simple one on there, and the one that has been one of the most difficult, as a matter of fact, is community policing. We didn't quite call it community policing back then. We said we want to orient the police more towards the neighborhoods and the people in the neighborhoods and have more visibility in the neighborhoods and work with the people rather than being an occupying army in the neighborhoods, to be working with the neighborhood groups and creating a partnership with the neighborhoods there. I'd seen a tape by Doug Rake which compared the Tokyo Police Department, which was the originator of community policing, and the Santa Ana Police Department that was working towards community policing, and the Portland Police Bureau, which was put into the video to be an example of the old method, the old European method, the British Peel style of police departments, where you just arrest people and put them into the justice system. The justice system was completely overloaded when I took office. You had your jails full, and we had one of the highest burglary rates in the nation right here in Portland, Oregon. I went through 5 police chiefs to get to that point. I appointed Penny Harrington right off the bat. I had a citizens committee that brought forth 4 people and offered them up as the best examples. I wanted them from the Bureau. I didn't want them from outside of the Portland area because I didn't think that Baker had a real good relationship with the department. It took that much time and that much energy. Dick Walker was really the one that started the change. I don't know if Penny could have ever made it because of the very big financial difficulties that we had right off the bat. But we've made it through, and that canoe going down the rapids has been held back in some cases by the rocks, and we've gotten a tremendous amount of criticism both from the union and from a variety of other people. But we've made our way through, and now we have probably the best example of community policing and a plan for community policing being carried out by Chief Potter, who has dedicated that and is going to stay on with the next administration, and the next administration is also dedicated to community policing. We have been solving problems in the neighborhood here in Portland, Oregon, USA. This all started many years ago when I was in the Neighborhood Association, and I think the council and my administration have emphasized that more than any other previous administration in making partnerships with the neighborhood. From Earl and his work, everything from recycling to the environmental services and putting in sewers has been very aggressive. Gretchen has been working at the housing program to bring things together. We've got a lot of things in place that are going to turn the neighborhoods around and help them turn themselves around is really what's got to happen. We've been developing leadership so that people have been coming forth and wanting to do it. They've been kicking me out of the neighborhood and telling me not to participate with them in this, but we've been out there lobbying for the funds and working behind the scenes and making things happen. A lot of things are in place. In fact, just this week we accepted a 4-point-something million economic development HUD grant that's going to help small business in Northeast Portland develop. We've been on kind of on the edge, ahead of the wave, I believe, in these areas across the nation. Wherever I go, to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, where we've received many awards, whether it's to L.A. and the Civic Index and the Civic League meeting last week, I just sat back smugly and I said, well, we've done that, we've done this, we've done that down the line, and we're going to be doing a lot more. The stage is set for that. I don't want to talk too long, so I'm going to, it's about 12:41. I want to hurry on so we can get to your questions. But what I think most important for the future is that we continue in the direction that we're going and use our own minds and our own energy to direct us in that direction. You know, our city and our community isn't, I hadn't thought about this, this just came to mind, but Athens, Greece, in ancient Athens was, I think, about the same size as Portland. I think it was about 350,000. We're up to 453,000 now. We got 1 million in the area. But you always think of something's got to happen in New York, or something's got to happen in Washington, D.C., or something's got to happen something else. Well, that's baloney. We've got the minds and the talent and the concern and the compassion and the desire to do things right here in Portland, Oregon. We can make those great decisions and make this a great city that preserves its livability and doesn't just walk all over itself and destroy itself with automobiles or whatever else it might be. We have a tremendous opportunity. We're, I think at this time, about the same, or when I took office, we were about the same size as New York City in the 1850s. But we don't want things to happen in Portland here the way that we've seen them across the United States and in some cases the world. I think also that we don't want to just compare ourselves to other places in the United States. We want to pull ourselves out of that and compare ourselves to cities all over the world. Take the international perspective. I've learned a lot from our sister cities. Sapporo has had a 20-year plan that they've completed. They've had a 20-year plan and they completed it. Now that they're on their second 20-year plan and going for it, and then on the national government side, they think 100 years ahead. We have introduced Future Focus, which many of you are familiar with, and I hope a lot of you get involved with, and I'm going to be involved with after I leave office. I was hoping that this Future Focus, and we did get a prize from it from the U.S. Conference of Mayors for Livability, would help us to carry on into the future from one administration to another to keep the goals on track. This club, of course, this association, this forum, has helped this city immensely. I can't tell you how much you have helped the city and its direction, and I think kept it on track in the right direction. It started with Ira Keller. It started with urban renewal, which I hated, and they moved me out of where the Ira Keller fountain is now, my first tavern. I fought them, but in retrospect, that's been one of the best things that ever happened in the city of Portland. Because it's preserved our downtown, it triggered the downtown plan, it triggered neighborhood association, it got us involved, it made us want to defend our city and keep it and make it better and better. And it's that small town thought, that feeling of a small town. It was originally mentioned in Atlantic Magazine, that it's that feeling that we're responsible, like people feel in a small town, of responsibility that's going to keep the city on track into the future. So it's going to take all of our involvement to make sure that that continues to happen on into the future. We ought to compare ourselves internationally, and we ought to compare ourselves with our own thoughts and set our own values and standards and make it so that people follow us. I always say we all came here on wagon trains, and we're going to be celebrating that next year. I'm going to be doing part of it on my bicycle. I'm not sure which part. But we were all getting away from other governments. I mean, some way or another. We came from Europe, first of all. Some of us is indentured and others not. And we were getting away from an oppression that was in other parts of the world. And then things built up in the east, and we were constantly moving west for greater opportunity. Well, now we're on the farthest shore that we can get to, and there's really no place else to escape to in this very big world, or this very small globe now is what it's become. And so we've got to make things work, and we've got to make them work here, and I think that Portland has one of the biggest opportunities to possibly demonstrate what a city can be and what democracy can be, because I'm really worried about the state of democracy in the long term. And we've got to be thinking 100 years down the line, not just 5 or 10 or 20. But just even now with the conflagrations that are going on all over the world, we can see how things can fall apart and old wounds can be opened up and old wars can be started all over again. So we have a tremendous responsibility, and we have the talent here. We have Portland State University as an urban grant institution as it is becoming now, and I hope to participate with them. We have the intelligence in the people that are in this room and throughout the city of Portland to want to make this city a great city in the world, not necessarily in size, but in intelligence, in livability, in consciousness towards other human beings, in preserving the global nation. I haven't said all that I want to say, and I'll never be able to say all that I want to say. But in that nervousness that I was talking about earlier about making this speech, one of the waitresses here, she said maybe it's more emotion than nervousness. And I think that's really true. I asked for the speech over a year ago to come and speak to you and thought I wanted to brag and so forth. But what I really want to do is just to thank you for allowing me to be mayor of this great city of Portland, Oregon. You helped to get me there. Probably some of you didn't help me to get me there. But you don't have, I mean, this is a win-win situation because I'm going out of office now for those people that didn't help me get me there. And, but I think the city is better. Harry Demarest just sent me a letter, he and Karen, that I just received yesterday that stated that you asked the question, do things look better now? And he said, yes, they do. And Harry, your word is good enough for me, I'll tell you that. Things look very good here. We had certain things that hadn't been completed yet. All of downtown was torn up and a variety of other things, but we've completed the central city plan. We've gone on with some social planning and trying to revitalize neighborhoods. We've got people moving back into the city. We've got our business revenues more than doubled. We've got our hotel motel tax, I shouldn't say that in their present, up 137%, I think it is, from when I took office. But that's because we've annexed some areas and added into the toll. We've raised it. But we've got a convention center, and we've got a higher occupancy rate going on. So that money is going to help bring in more money to the city of Portland and create more jobs. And we've got to continue on that line. When I've talked about a city that works, we can't just think about the government side and how we're going to control things. We've got to think about how we're going to stimulate quality things so that we can keep producing jobs and a rational economy and a sustainable economy in the city of Portland and the state of Oregon. When I first took office, I went out and I started meeting about every 2 weeks. I went to a different business around the city and met the CEOs and sat down and found out if they had any problems. The first one, I believe, was Consolidated Freightways. We had heard that they were thinking about moving out of the city, and because they had buildings scattered all over the place, and their headquarters had been moved to the San Francisco area many years before, but their administration was here and they still had over 1,000 employees. We didn't want them to move. Well, they said no, they weren't thinking about moving, but they really appreciated us coming and talking to them about what their needs were. And so later, they said that they were thinking about eventually adding on to their building, which they eventually did, and expanded their offices down in Northwest Portland, and we helped them to get street closures and a variety of other things at that time. We made those contacts through the Portland Development Commission and Gardner and myself. We have brought business to the city of Portland, and we've contacted a lot to make sure that they didn't move and make sure that we kept those production jobs, those family wage jobs here in the city of Portland. That should be continued on, and I think Mayor Katz is aware of the great projects at Portland Development Commission. Of course, that's a great concern that we have. Marge Kafori has just been having meetings of our legislators, because we have the state legislature happening next year. And that's always a very dangerous period, I'll tell you. Half of government is worrying about what's going to happen to you. You know, when you're in business, you think, you're always worried, think government's laying things on you, but government is laying things on government all the time. They're mandating things for us, and half of it is covering yourself one way or the other. And the politicians are always between lots of rocks and lots of hard places, whether it's the union and the citizens and the legislature and everybody else. It's tougher than small business, I'll tell you that. But small business is tough, and I just wish more of you had run for office this last year to see what it's like. Anyway, I want to get to questions, and I don't know what the time is going by here. We don't have too much time. So I just want to say a truly heartfelt thank you to allowing me to be the mayor of the city of Portland. It is an unequaled experience, I think, that a few of us in the world have the opportunity to have. I didn't graduate from college, but I'll tell you, this has been a real education, and I think it's that emotionalism. I feel like I'm at my college graduation here with you today, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you. I'm clapping for you. So we better sit down so we can get some questions going here. Thank you very much. I saw Rosie, and she was telling me Vera was standing on corners and trying to get some thoughts out of her mind, and people kept coming up to her and asking her questions and things. It was constant interruptions, and she said, now I understand why you go whoop, whoop. You can just kind of say whoop, whoop, and then go on, you know. That's true. Okay, who would like to ask a question? Oh, excuse me, you did. Oh, that's good.
Got to play by the rules, Mayor. Our first question will come from Joanne Allen, followed by Tony, and then the first question from the floor is from Len. And following that, please feel free to line up behind the microphone. We will take questions from members only, and we'll be going until at least 1:15.
Good afternoon. Mayor Clark, people say in hindsight, things look different. What one issue or one problem would you handle differently if you had the opportunity to do it over again?
That is a very, hindsight, like you say, you're saying with hindsight. Boy. Well, I'd know a lot more, so I'd probably do things a lot faster, a lot more decisively in some cases. But at the same time, there's only a certain hull speed for government. And I probably wouldn't have run for office the second time if I'd gotten things done as quickly as I wanted to. In fact, my original intention was to get things done faster. But things, you just don't make up your mind and say, this is the way things are going to be. The vision is always a little different than, when you really get out there and find it. So at this time, I can't say what I could change. There's something down there, and maybe I'll think of it in a minute. But at the time, I made the decisions that I thought were right at the time, and then your knowledge, etc., evolves on as you go on, and you learn more. You know what I would have done? I would have started the Mayor's Forum about 7 years earlier. It's going on for 3 years. But press conferences, Jack McGowan, we had the first press conference. We were trying to do press conferences, and we did it in my office. And there was all these questions coming at once, and it just didn't work. It was too small a room, I think. And I think if we'd adjusted it, Jack, it would have been all right. But I was just in a flurry at that time, and I said, we can't do that anymore. It's just, I can't handle it that same way. And we didn't have the long-term plan. But 3 years ago, and I saw this by watching watching the president. He always has live news conferences. And when the news conferences are all live on television, then the question is there, and this limits the amount of editing that goes on after the reporter leaves the room. So that it's, you've always got a record of what was said, and when they're in front of the camera, they always ask the questions a little bit differently, too. So I would have had the Mayor's Forum at least 5 years earlier, and because of regular press conferences, and I will advise Vera Katz to carry on with those. Also, it's an opportunity with the Mayor's Forum to get the word out about what's going on in city government. We don't get enough credit for all the things that we do in city government. I found that out. I mean, the employees, everybody works extremely hard to make things happen. As Michael Harrison said, he used to be in private practice as an architect, and he said in private business you're spending most of your time out looking for more business all the time. But he says when you're in government you always have more to do than you can possibly get done, and so you're doing the profession that you desire to be. Like he's doing urban planning and so forth. So it's a different ball game in that sense, and the word needs to be gotten out about what government is doing in the city, in the state, and everywhere. And it also gets more access for other people into the government. So you're knowledgeable and proud, and at the same time can make suggestions for change.
Welcome. Mr. Mayor, many have said my generation to be a lost generation, but I see my generation as a generation of hope and change. I was just wondering, what words of encouragement can you give my generation, and what changes do you hope will come through my generation?
Thank you, Tony. Well, there has been a huge shift in the last, well, since the Second World War, I guess, towards concern for the aging, and I'm one of those now. I'm in retirement age now, and but the youth we have truly neglected. There's tremendous opportunity. There's no reason to be lost. There's truly a tremendous amount of opportunity in the world today, and as I said before, we've got to solve these problems and make it so that the youth do survive. But it's not going to. But we need to get all the youth involved. The Kerner Commission in 1968 ended up with this nation is becoming more divided, black and white, and less equal. More separate and less equal. I can't remember the exact words, but the Kerner Commission stated that in 1968. And it says if you don't have a new urban agenda, if you don't have a new perspective and allow everyone to participate in the pursuit of happiness in this nation, that division is going to become even greater and greater. And it's continued to become split farther and farther apart. The Milton Eisenhower Foundation in 1990 said nothing's been done about the recommendations of the Kerner Commission in 1968, and you're going to have violence in this nation down the line. They said there's cures and so forth, but nothing's been done. 92, we had riots in Los Angeles again, and that's going to happen again. So we've got to face up to this, and I think we've got a great deal of hope with President Clinton in there. And on my list of volunteer projects is I want to get kids involved in entrepreneurial projects. And I've been a great supporter of Youth Today and other youth projects and the Leaders Roundtable. I even gave $10,000 in my campaign fund. I never should have done that, should I? But I gave it to the Youth Today one year to finance them for 1 year, and I've been behind them all the way. So I'm optimistic. Angela is going to bring the first Clark grandchild here forth pretty soon in February, which I'm very proud of and happy about. And Jason said I could be a babysitter. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think we ought to all get involved with our families more because there isn't division just in poorer neighborhoods, but there's been stress and dividing in families in the richest neighborhoods of our city besides the poorer neighborhoods. So thank you for I don't know that I answered that all the way, but I think there's a tremendous hope, but we all get to work and do something about it, not just sit on our hands. Yes, sir.
Mayor Clark, the Government and Taxation Committee, be interested in getting your perspective on an issue that's been around for a while. Given your 8 years in that office, what would you feel would be the advantage or disadvantage in the city going to a system in its government that would include an appointive manager who would be involved in all aspects of the city government without necessarily changing too much the rest of the structure? We'd like to know why, please.
Well, I haven't been a big proponent. In a sense, I've been a big proponent of a city manager, and I haven't been a big proponent of changing the city structure of government the way that it exists now. But you have to have a memory, and you have so that you have a continuity from one administration to another, and et cetera. And I have tended to put under Steve Bauer, who is our Office of Fiscal Administration, and done a fantastic job. I mean, we've gotten all kinds of prizes. That's the reason I left the budget in brief on the table, because we're considered one of the best, if not the best managed city in the United States of America. And a lot of it has to do with our Office of Fiscal Administration and the fact that I have concentrated the larger financial management area in his area. Financial management, personnel, risk management, those things that apply to most other bureaus, not general services. That's under David Kish, and he's doing a good job there. I believe a certain amount of that is the right way to go. But at the same time, you get a lot more, when you've got a commissioner involved with a bureau and not only responsible for legislative duties, he is much more active, takes much more aggressive actions towards getting things accomplished, is much more responsive to the public than you'll find if you don't have a commissioner in charge of that bureau. This system came out of when Galveston had a hurricane at the turn of the century, and they divided the job up between the 5 members of the council and said, let's go solve this problem. As long as this system of government, the mayor or whoever it may be, keeps one direction for the council to go, they can accomplish a tremendous amount. And until there's another stable government in this area, I think we provide more stability than most other governments in the area. I don't think you ought to change this form of government. After that, you can think about it, but I would be very careful about it. Art Holland, he's a former mayor of Trenton, New Jersey. He passed away, but he was the mayor there for many, many years, and he talked about how they had changed their form back to another one, to a way that and he's the one that went in and changed it back because it just wasn't working at all. The county government here has been under such scrutiny and such change, they don't know where they're going, and they've been very difficult for them to make a decision. I do believe in organizing it in such a way that you get everybody to cooperate together, but I don't know about going to a straight city manager situation at this time. You can almost do it right now, though. Yes, sir. I hope that answers the question. It answers my position on it, I think.
Mr. Mayor, Dr. Press, a member of the City Club, I have a 2-part question for you. We have just heard a resolution debated here in which the City Club has resolved to have Senator Packwood come in and, in effect, defend his conduct. My question is, 1, has sexual harassment been a problem during your 8 years? I know it hasn't surfaced, but has it been a problem to you covertly? And 2, has...
What do you mean you know it hasn't surfaced? What are you talking about? Do you know something I don't know?
No. Well, let's say it hasn't come to my attention.
Yeah.
And the second part of it is this. The Wall Street Journal has had an editorial indicating that perhaps portions of the attack against the senator have been developed or generated by political aspects. Is it your opinion that some of the public or all of the public outcry that they have gone overboard in this regard, or do you feel that they have not gone overboard and it is exactly what is called for?
I don't like seeing things tried in the press. That's always been a bother to me. There get to be accusations in the press that just are untrue, and then they go on and on. I mean, they'll put them in the computer and they never quit spitting them out, and pretty soon, just by repetition, that person gets labeled with a certain thing that can be completely false. I don't know, or I don't think that that's the case in this case, but I think they ought to get down to some sort of procedure. I think the ball is in Senator Packwood's hands at this time, and I think he ought to take a more definitive action on it. And what that would be, I mean, people are asking for his resignation. I don't know if it will come to that. He's a consummate politician. I've heard about, it's interesting, you know, as a citizen, I never heard about these kind of accusations. But shortly after I was elected mayor, it was kind of like common knowledge in Washington, D.C. and other places and people that I talked to. And I've always been, I mean, when this came out, I was extremely surprised that, well, why didn't this happen sooner? Why didn't this come out sooner? Why didn't people talk about it sooner? I've been in office 8 years, and I haven't heard any public outcry. And I just heard it as hearsay. There was no way I was going to repeat it, but I heard it as hearsay, you see. So it's too bad that it hasn't, in a way. I don't know how to go farther on that. And as far as my office, there has been problems here. I mean, we've had sexual harassment in different cases. I haven't had any personally towards me, but yeah. But I've learned to watch my language. You know, I mean, My sensitivity has changed. You don't realize,
true.
and that's very important, the sensitivity towards other human beings and their perspectives. And many, many times you just don't know that you're saying something that's offending someone. And so I've been learning to be a better listener. I've been to diversity training, and hopefully, as this education as being mayor, I've learned greater sensitivity too.
I thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
My name is Dan Drinkward, an honorary member of the City Club and a member of the Youth Forum. I was wondering what we as young people could do to get our ideas heard by politicians.
Well, I have a son, Nick. He's in St. Petersburg, Russia right now. But we've got a skateboard park in this town mainly because of him. So you get your dad to run for mayor or get the mayor out there. You lobby and you lobby and you lobby. And you go down and you organize your kids. He went down to the skateboard. He got the skateboarders to register to vote, to come out and vote. He got registered to voters to sign up and vote for the ballot measure, the parks measure in 1988. To get a skateboard park in this town. We've got an indoor skateboard park. It's running beautifully over there. And we've got an ad hoc skateboard park under the Burnside Bridge that we're trying to preserve too. Mike Lindbergh and his office have promised me to preserve that before I get out of office. I don't know whether they're going to be able to or not, but I hope that we can preserve the one under the Burnside Bridge. But mainly, it's getting involved. Youth today is one of the best examples of getting involved, finding out how government works. We need your leadership. We need the development of this leadership. That's one of the major goals, 6 goals of the future focus, is developing leadership for this city. And I think it was Pericles in ancient Greece that said, you're worth nothing unless you're involved in your government or in the government of your city. So I don't believe nothing, but I think we've got to get more and more involved in people, everybody being a part of their city and watching out for those broken windows, because the broken windows start happening and people start turning away, and pretty soon the whole neighborhood goes to hell. So get involved and lobby your dad and lobby other people and have opinions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ray Polani, a City Club member. Honorable Mayor, how do you feel now about the missed opportunity of moving the East Bank Freeway off of the Willamette?
I don't feel it was a missed opportunity. Ray, as I've said before, I was never for moving that freeway. I mean, I would like it under certain circumstances. But I had called on many of the businesses in that area, and they were the ones that asked for the new ramp to go so that they would have access going south on I-5 instead of having to drive across the bridges and come to the west side to get on I-5, so they'd have that access, and so they'd have stability in the future. And it took them 10 years to get that new ramp. What was it, $54 million to get that single ramp going up there. And that was going to stabilize. They'd increase from about 14,000 jobs or 15,000 jobs up to 20,000 jobs. And I'm not for one of those that believes that you just ought to move all business out of the city. I think it ought to be in the city. And in that neighborhood, 65% of the people, of the 20,000 people that work there, live in the adjoining neighborhood. So they're not impacting the transportation system. You start moving those businesses, and you're going to have more. You're going to create more traffic. The parkway is going to be wide. I mean, it would have been a lot wider and so forth if we'd taken the freeway out. But I figured it was going to impact our relationships with our neighbors that are partners in JPAC, and also that it was going to take another 10 years to accomplish it. And so why not build what we've got now, improve the waterway, connect OMSI and connect the convention center along the water. We've got plans there. Mike Lindbergh is going forth with, we will after we get those ramps all built. And we'll have a beautiful thing. And then hopefully, in the 20 years that would take us to get the additional money to move the entire freeway, we might even be thinking about taking the whole freeway out. You know.
I guess we're still on different sides.
Yeah, oh, I know. Yeah. No, people always thought that Earl just twisted everybody's arm, but there was a pretty solid consensus on that. Yes, sir.
Ted Kay, City Club member. Mayor Clark, what do you think of the idea of holding a Lewis and Clark bicentennial exposition in the year 2005?
We're going to do it. You know, haven't you been talking to the Historical Society? We've got a big plan to make this happen, and I hope I'm around to participate in that because it's a very exciting thing. In fact, it's bringing together all kinds of thought. I mean, this is actually the mechanism that I was talking about in putting Portland on the map and bringing this thought about preserving a city. I mean, making a partnership between the Historical Society and the entire community, including all the universities in the area, to make it so that we have a forum here in Portland, Oregon. We're equidistant between London and Tokyo. I don't know if you realize that. But the world is filled out. I brought my globe today. I always carry my little globe, you see. And this has got Portland. This is a little globe I bought in Guadalajara. And it doesn't have Seattle on here, but it's got Portland. And we're equidistant between Tokyo and London. We're therefore ideal to have worldwide conferences on livability issues because this city of Portland is truly a living laboratory, a living example of what can be done for the livability of city when you use good design. So, yes.
Carla Verbeck, City Club member. During at least the last 8 years before your administration, and here and there throughout the administration, North and Northeast Portland have been ignored. I live in Southwest. I have services, I have police, I have roads that are always being fixed up and cleaned, and I wonder every time I see a truck go by, if I was living in Northeast, would these services be here? I go down the road and see the boarded up streets and the people standing on the corners, and I wonder, why has this half of the city been completely ignored? And what advice will you give Mayor Katz for revitalizing that most neglected piece of Portland?
Well, I tell you, when I took office, I went down and talked. Bill Roberts had been chair of the PDC for a long time, and they just put in the new. Well, he didn't. PDC didn't do it. The transportation did, but he said, "Bud, we've failed in Northeast Portland." That was 8 years ago, almost 8.5 years ago. Well, we haven't failed, but we haven't made as much progress as I would like to have made. But we've got a lot of things in place, and we put a tremendous amount of energy and time, and the leadership is developing in Northeast Portland. We've gotten monies from Washington in a variety of areas. I've concentrated the housing under Gretchen Kafori, and there's a lot of things in place. It isn't that nothing has been done. There's been a tremendous amount being done, and there's been a lot of progress. My wife and I were even thinking about buying a house over there and setting an example if the mayor would move into the neighborhood. My son actually has bought a house in North Portland. And I've been encouraging people to buy houses in North and Northeast Portland. I ride my bicycle almost every weekend, and I wander through all the neighborhoods of the city at one time or the other, and I have seen improvement, but not as much improvement as I would like. And with community policing, we're going to get a lot more changes happening as far as the relations between, well, that's already happened actually. We've got pilot projects with community policing at Iris Court. Columbia Villa has turned around. In fact, they're even creating their own community development corporation there. The Northeast Community Development Corporation we have funded and started, and it's getting up and rolling and doing a good job. We've got JobNet, where we actually go and knock on doors and get people that have given up on ever getting a job to come out and go to the jobs. We've attached those jobs to economic development in the region. We have an economic development zone in that area. There's a whole bunch of things going on in that area if everybody knew about it. That's what I say. We need to get more information out about what Portland City government and all government is doing in this area. And it's going to work. And Katz has got a good, strong base there to carry forward.
Stephen Taylor, City Club member. Mayor Clark, I wonder whether you feel you have benefited by the fact that Portland elected officials are elected on a nonpartisan basis, and whether you think our state and federal governments could benefit by a similar system.
Actually, the party system in the state of Oregon, I feel, is very weak, actually, because of the fact that most local officials in the state are nonpartisan. Therefore, it isn't like many other states where all elected officials are tied to the political system and the political party. You don't work your way up in it. I never would have been mayor if that had been the case here in Portland. The Chicago mayor's got to come up through the ranks, you know. I don't have any recommendation on the state level. I'm not a politician. I just came in to do a job. Kitty?
Kitty Wheeler, City Club member.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned, I'm sure you share the concern about the infrastructure of our city. We know we're tops in livability, we're tops in citizenry. My particular neighborhood had the 89-year-old sewer pipes go. And it was a 6-month project of 24 hours a day repairing this.
Yeah.
And where are we citywide on the crucial infrastructure? I don't see this in your new budget. And what would you tell Vera and others to do in terms of capital infrastructure?
Well, we have a okay, that was the last question. Commissioner Blumenauer is here, and he's in charge of that bureau. I should have him answer that question. He knows it all, I'll tell you. But there is capital, and that is not, you won't see it in that budget because that's the general fund budget. Most of that is the general fund budget that you're looking at, and that's under environmental services, and that's an enterprise budget, and we have greater capital programs in the combined sewer outflow and also in East County that is happening. But your kind of thing should just be handled, I mean, we have to identify those areas that have those old sewers. Did you have the wooden sewers up there? Yeah, no, there's actually some wooden sewers left in some parts of the city. I'll bet you there's money in the capital program to do that in environmental services. I'd almost bet that it's there to handle it. We should anticipate it happening rather than have it break down. But you talk about infrastructure. This nation has suffered nationally with the infrastructure, and I think the Clinton administration has a plan to convert military to fixing up the infrastructure of this country. But I just came back from Habarovsk in August, and if you think we don't have problems compared to theirs at all, I mean, they've got manholes with no covers on them and cars dodging things, and you can't drink the water and a whole variety of things in a very pristine area that you should not have those problems. We've all suffered from the Cold War, and hopefully for our youth and everybody else, there's hope in the future for our youth and for our cities, and we start focusing on the real national security issues, which I consider internal to the cities of this nation, from the drug problem and then fixing the infrastructure too. Thank you, Kitty.
Well, Mayor Clark, it's said that citizens are the riches of the city, and there's no question in our mind that Portland is a much richer city for having had you as mayor for the past 8 years. And on behalf of the City Club, I'd like to thank you for appearing with us today and sharing that with us. And we know you won't be going far, but we wish you good health and Godspeed, and we're adjourned.